There was a team of online gamers named Blank. They were so good that for more than 1,000 competitors in a single tournament competed against them, with some even using elaborate cheats, they would still win. The losing players were unaware that they were only 2 humans in Blank, as they routinely played with 4 simultaneous opponents. Sora and Shiro are 2 siblings whose online gaming team is known as the Blank and is undefeated. In reality, they are totally isolated introverts who are ignored by society. One day, Tet challenges them to a game of chess, which they eventually win. In response, he offers to send them to a world where games are the primary focus, and they accept, believing it to be a joke. They are then transported to a world known as Disboard, where a spell called the 10 Pledges prevents violence and enforces the rules and outcomes of the games. They travel to Elkaya, a human-populated nation. As the 2 of them enter Elchia, the capital city of humanity, there is a gambling tournament to decide the next king. As written in the will of the last, it is observed that Stephanie Dola and Shlami Zell are playing poker in the inn. Sora and Shiro are informed by an unidentified woman that Stephanie is the granddaughter of the previous king and that she has entered the tournament in order to become the next king. Sora plays poker against that woman for her money and wins by out-cheating her. As Sora and Shiro leave, they observe that Shlami is cheating, but are uncertain of the method. Sora whispers in Stephanie's ear that Shlami was cheating, and the siblings head up to their room at an inn and decide their next goal is to find a home. Stephanie Dola, who had literally lost everything, including her shirt, to Shlami Zell in a card game, attempted to blame Shiro and Sora for her loss because they refused to reveal how Shlami was cheating. However, the Blank siblings refused to comply. They offered to settle the dispute with a game. As any decent Disboard resident would have done, Sora tricks her into a game of rock, paper, scissors, and then, after he wins, he uses the pledges to make her fall in love with him. Sora and Shiro thereafter resettle in the palace with Stephanie. When she returned to give them some cookies and tea, she warned herself not to be swayed by his otherworldly charms before entering the room. She observed that they were seated on the balcony, at which point they discussed how humanity was the lowest-ranked species due to its low affinity for magic. After remembering the girl who used magic in the inn, Sora and Shiro made their way to the library to continue their investigation. At the library, Shiro picked out the humanity language immediately and encouraged Shiro to do so as well. They learned more about the world there. Later, as Sora talked with Shiro, Shiro told him that Sora was having a blast, and he said it was better than living in their old world. After a confrontation with Shlami, Sora told Stephanie that they were going to prove that her grandfather was not a fool by assisting her in reviving Elkaya. As they walked down the hallway, he made a note on his phone that he would soon be a king. Shiro, Sora, and Stephanie hastened down toward the throne room. They intended to dispute Shlami Zell's ascension to the throne. Sora attempted to convince the subjects that the elf Phil Nilvaren was actually helping Shlami win with her magic power, and that if she were crowned, humanity's fate would be handed over to the elves. Shlami, however, was too clever to be so easily trapped, much to the delight of Sora and Shiro, who simply love a challenge. Shlami accepted their proposition for one more game, but since Blank challenged the proceedings, Shlami claimed the right to select the game. The game that Shlami selected to play is an unusual game of chess, in which Sora plays a larger role than Shiro. Sora deduces that the game is a war simulator with chess-themed pieces. Sora's charisma rallies his army, giving them the upper hand and compelling Shlami to cheat by corrupting Sora's soldiers. Sora convinces Shlami's queen to join his army by claiming that her king is corrupt. Shlami's army begins to defect to her former queen. Ultimately, her king is murdered due to her tyrannical rule, and Sora emerges victorious. Sora denounces Shlami's plan to assimilate humans and elves, stating that humanity is more powerful than she believes. They are, however, unable to agree on who will become king, and the siblings begin a series of tiresome, fruitless games to determine who will be crowned. Sora realizes after more than a day that having a single king was never necessary. This discovery puts an end to their competition. They have been crowned the king and queen of humanity and the kingdom of Elkaya. They commence addressing Elkaya's political and economic issues. Later, they attend the formal coronation and are presented with humanity's race piece, a chess piece representing humanity's rights and free will. Tet visits Sora and Shiro and explains that whoever collects all 16 chess pieces, one for each species, will earn the right to challenge him for his title of God. In response, Sora and Shiro accept his challenge and declare that they will be victorious. Sora and Shiro entrust Stephanie with Elkaya's political duties. She is challenged to a game by nobles who oppose the reform. Stephanie was at her wit's end. The only thing that Shiro and Sora seemed to do all day was laze around and read, despite the fact that she had put a lot of effort into ensuring that their political apparatus of the kingdom continued to function properly. She challenged Sora to a game of blackjack in order to teach them a lesson. She even secretly prepared a cheat. If she won, her hopes of binding him to the pledge to perform his duties, she attempts to use false shuffling but ends up losing due to his card-counting skill. Sora, realizing her predicament, outsmarts the nobles and employs the previous game to make Stephanie behave like a dog. Stephanie tries multiple times more to induce Sora to assume responsibility as Elkaya's king, but to no avail. Sora and Shiro reveal that they were not slacking, but rather researching methods to conquer the other nations. In response, Stephanie directs them to Elkaya's library, which is owned by Jibril's Flugel. After defeating the previous king in a game, the Flugel gained ownership of Elchia's library and the vast majority of its knowledge of books. The group then decides to confront the Flugel and reclaim the library. Shiro and Sora challenge Jibril by betting on their tablet computer full of books. Considering it of high value, Jibril offers her freedom in exchange for a Flugel who used to kill gods in her younger days. She has the confidence to win. The game played is Shiratori. However, this was no ordinary game of Shiratori. It was the materialization Shiratori, which signified that any valid word they played will be materialized or dematerialized, respectively. On one side of the conflict, there was a being whose intellect is far superior to that of humans and whose battle skills have been honed for millennia. On the other hand, we had two NEETs whose strategies for online video games had developed for years. They initiate a game of Shiratori in which the words they speak will materialize or vanish from the environment. Sora and Shiro deduce from the game that Disboard's scientific research is lacking and use this information to their advantage. They eliminate Jibril from the game by removing Coulomb's law and inducing a hypernova. Jibril, impressed by the two, solemnly swears her loyalty to them. Jibril did more than simply tolerate Shiro and Sora as her new masters. She appeared to express an interest in their antics, although she did not hold Stephanie Dola in high regard. Expecting deep insights into the War Beast's gaming skills, Sora asked Jibril for a complete debrief. Jibril discloses her knowledge of the Werebeasts, revealing that they have been unbeaten for decades and always erase the opponent's memories of the game. When Sora discovers that Elkaya's king has challenged the Werebeasts 8 times and lost a significant amount of land, he criticizes the king and angers Stephanie. When planning their strategy against the Werebeasts, it is difficult for the siblings to devise a plan to defeat them. This is due to the fact that the memories of the Werebeast challenges concerning the games would be erased in case they lost. The siblings are at a loss. Upon further investigation, Sora questions the king's motivations until Stephanie entrusts Sora with the key left by the former king, which unlocks the hidden door in her grandfather's bedroom that leads to his hidden library in the king's chambers. There, they discover information about the Werebeasts and their choice of games. Shiro and Sora have decided to take the fight of the Eastern Federation, so they travel with Stephanie and Jibril to the Warbeasts' embassy. The Warbeasts are challenged to a game. Step by step, they show Ino Hatsushi, the assistant ambassador, and his granddaughter, the ambassador Izuna Hatsushi, that they know the Warbeasts' mind-reading ability is just a myth. In addition, they reveal that Blank has deduced the exact nature of the Warbeasts' super-secret game, and they are fully aware of the necessary steps to defeat it. When Ino shows signs of hesitation, Sora and Shiro threaten to leak that information to the elves if their challenge is not accepted. Sora bets humanity's chess piece in return for all the lands of the continent. Sora waits for the necessary victory piece while the Eastern Federation prepares for the game. The next day, Shiro realizes that everyone has forgotten about Sora. In an effort to remember her brother, Shiro searches the castle whistle frantically for Sora. To her dismay, she is unable to locate Sora, and she begins to question his existence. Stephanie and Jibril cannot recall who Sora is, and are therefore unable to assist Shiro in her search. Jibril challenges Shiro to a game of chess, with Shiro's memories of Sora at the stake. Jibril believes Sora to be a figment of Shiro's imagination. Jibril requests that Shiro intentionally lose this game so that she can stop worrying about Sora. As Shiro is about to lose to Jibril, she senses a faint sensation of Sora. This motivates Shiro to win the match against Jibril instead of throwing it. Shiro asks Stephanie and Jibril to recall the previous days in order to prove that Sora exists, but neither can. Shiro recalls that Sora arranged a game of Reversi with Chlammy. The game's pieces represent the components of Sora's and Chlamy's identities. As a result of losing the majority of his pieces, Sora was almost completely wiped from existence. However, Shiro is able to maintain her memories of him thanks to the remaining 3 pieces. Shiro discovers the pieces in her room and positions them on an invisible board to win the game and restore Sora. Sora, upon regaining consciousness following his victory, explains his 2 requirements for winning the game from Chlammy. First, he demands that they each keep a copy of the memories they stole from one another, in addition to their own original memories. Second, he requires the ability to modify Thea's memories. Sora made a surprising announcement. In an effort to improve teamwork, everyone was required to introduce themselves. Chlammy Zell did not want to say much more than her name, but with Sora's encouragement, she did her part. Everything was going smoothly until they reached Vil Nilvaren. She was apparently unwilling to collaborate with the Flugel Jibril, who had destroyed at least one and possibly more elven cities during the Great War. After their preparations to confront the Eastern Federation were concluded and they had taken a bath together along with their new allies, Chlammy and Fiel, the time came for Sora and Shiro to challenge the werebeasts with the fate of all humanity at stake, accompanied by Jibril and Stephanie. In order to prevent cheating, the match against the werebeasts is made public per Sora's request. But just as the game begins, the siblings were overcome with despair when they find themselves in a virtual reality resembling Tokyo, where their past traumas surface and leave them stunned. Sora and Shiro return to normal after remembering they are in a virtual reality. The game is a type of cops and robbers in which they use guns that fire heart-shaped bullets. Sora, Shiro, and Jibril engage in a combat with Izuna and determine that her grandfather, Ino Hatsushi, is revealing their location by mentally communicating with her, and realize that the game is so corrupted that victory against the werebeasts is nearly impossible. In the meantime, Stephanie is just being Stephanie, oblivious to the game. When Shiro is shot by Izuna and placed under her control, all hope seems lost. After Izuna discovers that she was tricked by Shiro and placed in a dire situation for the first time in her life, she begins to enjoy a game. Sora and the others regroup while Shiro makes the necessary modifications to their plans. Sora and Shiro encircle Izuna, compelling her to use the special ability Blood Devastation to burst her abilities. Shiro and Sora anticipated that Izuna Hatsushi would gain strength, but not to the extent that she did. Izuna appeared to move faster than the laws of physics, or even the game's physics would permit. Sora had to remove his shoes in order to block Izuna's shot. However, her speed and ferocity appeared to finally overwhelm them. She shot off Sora's defense to strike Shiro, and a second shot struck Sora. As they descended, Ino Hatsushi began to rejoice. Sora and Shiro are cornered by Izuna's full strength, but just as she believes she has won, she falls into their ultimate trap and is shot by Stephanie. Humanity thus wins the game. Later, when the siblings are summoned by the Shrine Maiden, Miko, the leader of the werebeasts, Sora assures her of his goodwill. Sora exerts political pressure on the Shrine Maiden in order to force her to challenge him to a game. They flip a coin, and Sora causes it to land on its edge. He persuades the Miko to declare both sides victorious, and as a result, Elkaya can share resources with the Eastern Federation while the werebeasts retain their self-governance. The allied nation is labeled the Elkaya Federation. Sora and Shiro reaffirm their determination to reunite all the races of the Disboard under their rule and one day challenge Tet for the title of One True God as they prepare for their upcoming battles. But before they depart, Sora uses Miko as a medium to alert the old Dews, the top-ranked exceed that the game is on. Thank you for watching the video, and don't forget to click the bell icon and like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos.